everybody, welcome back to J.P.s World of Wrestling. I am your man J.P. And today we're talking about Starcade. That's right, the WCW Starcade. Now actually, technically speaking, it was NWA Starcade, because it was back in 1983, which is before it was WCW. Back then it was the NWA. And it's back before Ted Turner bought it and turned it into World Championship Wrestling. Now I had already kind of recorded this video, but I kept saying that it occurred in 1993, which is not correct. It was 1983. And there was a big build-up for this event, the big main event, steel cage match, World Heavyweight title. Harley Race would defend against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And the special guest referee, I forget the guy's name, but he was a retired wrestler. And I'll talk about that in a minute, because he's kind of the reason that I thought maybe the match wasn't as good as it could have been. So anyway, but yeah, this is before I was a wrestling fan. This took place before I knew what wrestling, let alone what the NWA was. And honestly speaking, I was a WWF fan long before I even knew what the NWA even was. So, but they were really kind of ahead of the curve on this one, because WWF certainly really wasn't doing pay-per-views at the time. So for the NWA to come out with this, this big event, and I believe the first few were on Christmas Day, or Thanksgiving Day rather. They were on Thanksgiving. So, that was pretty interesting that they would have it on a big holiday like that. But I think later on, due to Vince McMahon making threats to the pay-per-view companies, WCW couldn't put Starcade on Thanksgiving Day anymore. So Vince McMahon, that's where Survivor Series came from. Vince McMahon said, no, I'll give you something on Thanksgiving Day. Just don't put my competition on pay-per-view on Thanksgiving. So, whatever. Anyway, I'm going off the rails here. So, Starcade 83, like I said, it was before I was even a wrestling fan. Later on, years later, I went back on the WWE network and I streamed it. And I watched it, and I don't really remember a whole lot about it. I do remember two matches. There was the main event, and there was another one, but I'll save that one for last. So the main event, Ric Flair, Harley Race, NWA title, guest referee, retired wrestler guy, old guy. But every time either Harley Race, easy for me to say, every time either opponent would go to utilize the cage, the referee would hold it back and no, the marquee says wrestling, therefore you shall only wrestle. You shall not do anything to make the match watchable or entertaining. You must only wrestle. So it just kept getting on my nerves. Every time they would throw a closed fist punch, he would hold it back. No! Open hand only. We're only going to follow the rules. It was just irritating. And like I said, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about the guy, the referee. I don't even remember his name, but anyway, but Ric Flair ended up winning. He began his second NWA World Title reign. And the NWA, of course, didn't become WCW until years later, after Ted Turner bought it and changed the name to WCW. But that was, I think, 1990 or something like that. Anyway, so that brings me to the other match that was notable for this event, and it was a dog collar match. That's right, and it was between Roddy Piper and Greg the Hammer Valentine. Although back then it was just Greg Valentine and Roddy Piper, but it was a brutal match. It was very bloody. Both men utilized the chain. They really did hit each other. There was nothing fake about this match. And years later, when I got to meet Roddy Piper, I asked him about that match. He's like, oh man, I tell you what, that match, neither me or Greg were the same after that match physically. I mean, that match took so much out of us physically. You know, I've still got scars from that match. Greg still got scars on his ears from that match. And so it was a pretty memorable match. And I know this because I remember it. And I've got like a bad memory with certain things. But yeah, that was one match that was notable for that event. And that was one that it was kind of a unique because I had never really seen too many matches that were like that bloody. I know there had been some in the past. Um, if I, it looks like I'm continuously itching my arm, it's because I got a mosquito bite right there, and it's kind of itchy. But anyway, why did I talk about that? I don't know. And anyway, so that match, that dog collar match, to me that was probably my favorite match on the whole event for Starcade because I had never seen anything like it, and it really was legit, just brutal, like real blood and everything. So, man, that was very cool. So, if you haven't seen Starcade '83, the very first one, I recommend going to Peacock, finding it, streaming it, and watching it because it was, you know, it's an opportunity, you know, to kind of go back and look at what wrestling was like before Hulk Hogan, because this really was before, you know, pre, you know, WWF, you know, Hulk Hogan era. Now Hulk Hogan had been there before, but he was a heel, and in '83, I believe he was wrestling in the AWA, and he was chasing the title, but never actually really won the title. So, you know, this is pre WWF Hulk Hogan era. So, anyway, so it's fun to go back and look at these kind of things, and it was fun for me to talk about it. So, have you seen Starcade '83? Have you seen it? Have you not? Whatever. Comments below. So, if you're new, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.